I'm sorry. The weather has gone crazy out there. Is it okay if I use your phone?
Are you ready for story time here on Horror Fiend TV as we are back for yet another episode of What's Your Story? And before we talk about this interesting film, let me introduce once again my co-host, the fourth corner herself, Lexi. How are you doing? And are you ready for this particular film?
Yes, I'm ready for this one. This one was definitely interesting. I have to be honest. I can't wait to dig into it though. I'm doing good. Trying to be as cool as you guys, setting up the new office. Trying to be. We'll get there. But yeah, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, this one is all right. So let me tell everybody, just to let you know, this one is not going to be for everybody because this is not like any other film that you've seen. For this film in particular, is the whole film is the narrative, the dialogue between Patrick and this mysterious woman that basically carries the film. And it's a very interesting dynamic because you don't get too many films like this, and it is a slow burn, but there are many layers of this film that make it interesting, and you're gonna find out just why. So, Lexi, I gotta ask you, we do a lot of story driven films, and this one was different from many of them that we've done because it is the narrative storytelling that really draws this film and makes this film apart from others. Now, did the storytelling between Patrick and this mysterious woman kind of have you hooked from the get go?
Well, it's a two-handed horror, basically. Um, the thing that caught my attention the most was the absolute very beginning. Not even before the woman comes in. My absolute captivation was because I'll be honest, I watched it last night. I was at work. I put my headphones in. I have it in the background. First thing I hear is the film we just recently filmed with voices from the mausoleum. The song, I don't know if you recognized it.
Yeah.
The Sleepwalk was from Sleepwalker, Stephen King. So I was like, I came to the movie quickly, so it caught my attention. I got done with work very late because I was into the film. However, I'm gonna get in more detail because at first watch, I was kind of unhappy with it, but then I sat back and was like, well, this was good, and this was, and then I started putting piece. This film is confusing if you don't pay attention. Um, yeah, the cinema photography was really well. It's driven by just who cares, and that's why I said a two-handed horror because it was really focused on these two, the visitor and the gentleman, and they really had to rely on each other to keep the story going. So this was definitely different from other movies that we've talked about because you had some movies that we've went over were started with action, or some are based off of video games, and or we go over so many different stories. This one was completely different and very slow burn, like you said, an absolute and extreme slow burn. But however, the characters are what makes this film, and the cinematography as well. There's a lot more to just the characters, not just the characters. I mean, just the sound effects of the film and how that plays a role into the eeriness of this.
Yeah, for me, it took me a while to get into. Like I love cinematography. You know, we'll talk about that later, but this film does other methods to basically catch your attention. So when this, I mean, the fact that she's just called a visitor, there was no name to her. She didn't even say her name in the film, which was even more interesting. But the
Right.
fact that you have these two characters, just majority of the film sitting down and having a conversation, But what you really start noticing is they're literally trying to figure out what is the other one up to. The fact that, here you have Patrick who lives by himself. He has a peculiar manner of the way he presents himself. And you have this woman who, I mean, not for nothing, somebody knocks in your door in the middle of the night while there's a hell of a storm outside, asks if they could come inside, and for a while to seek shelter. I don't know that many people that would be like, yeah, come right in. And the fact that Patrick was like, all right, come in, come inside. But, the dialogue between them was just so, it reminded me of a little bit of The Witch, because The Witch, while there's not a lot of stuff they show, it is the dialogue between the characters that drives the story. And this one was in the same kind of steps, because while they're talking, there's certain things around them that are happening as far as the weather, as far as sound effects, that basically drives the fact that here are these two people stuck in this. It's like a cabin. It was like a trailer park,
Yeah.
and they're stuck there the whole night, trying to really figure out what is up with the other one. Because, I mean, we'll talk about it, later on about the twist in this, but yeah, it was a lot of build up, and it's one of those movies that you have to sit there and pay attention to the conversation, because there are a lot of hints that go on in the conversation, a lot of foreshadowing that if you don't pick it up at the right time, you're going to miss it. And the fact that, there's certain parts of the conversation that gets brought up later, because mind you, they don't really trust each other, and who would? But yeah, I mentioned earlier something about the cinematography. Now, this film, the cinematography is beautifully done. I would say this is one of the strong suits of this film. The fact that you have this storm outside, you have the sound of the wind, you have like the footsteps or the crackling woods. I mean, you have so much things in this film. So, Lexi, I mean, it was obviously that all these effects were done for a reason. But did you think that the cinematography in this film like helped keep the atmosphere full of anxiety?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I had anxiety watching it because I mean, is the single man living obviously in a trailer neighborhood, and there's a massive storm. Like, we got shots on the outside of his house where it looked like a tornado was about to run through. So I was kind of scared for his life. But the sound effects of the rain and the wind, like the wind sounded like women screaming. So that's kind of a clue to the twist. We'll get there. But the wind sounded like women screaming. The rain sounded like footsteps stepping on top of his house. But I mean, you're in a trailer. You're going to hear absolutely everything of that rainstorm. But it definitely carries the story, and it does hint into some of the clues for the ending. Also, the two characters, again, their wording of a lot of things. I also like the fact that you just don't know who is, like, usually in films, you know who the victim is and who the suspect, or you kind of predict it. This one was definitely, you just couldn't tell. It made me feel like it was giving me anxiety, because I can usually really kind of guess pretty well when it comes to these. But this one, I was like, oh, yeah, for sure, she's crazy. Oh, wait, no, for sure, he's crazy. So it was just like this back and forth. You're fighting with yourself, and you don't even realize now you have anxiety thinking about it. And this movie really fucked me up.
Yeah, this one, I mean, like I was saying before, I enjoy the cinematography in this film.
Right.
The shots that were taken, the shots of Patrick, because Patrick rarely did he look up to, at her during conversations. She always had his head down. She did too. She always had her head down. She was afraid to look up. And as the night progresses, as the storm intensifies, I mean, she at a certain point she wants to go, and he tells her go. And did you lock the door? No, the door's not locked. And she was adamant that he locked the door to the point where she started screaming at him. So he sat down and she walks the door, open the door, but she opens that door and like you were saying, the sound of the wind, the shrieking it was giving.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they prolonged how long she kept the door open before she closed the door and sat back down. Basically gave in to, this notion that, all right, I'm stuck here. Not to make matters worse, when they lose power, the lighting in that scene was just phenomenal because
Mm-hmm.
he's having a conversation with her in the shadows. And
It's realistic.
Yes, and you're wondering what.
Get the moonlight from the storm creeping in a little bit with the windows, but it's realistic.
I mean, all the shots, I mean, they would show him with his back turned. All you see is basically, his form. He would look down. I mean, when he turns to her, you have half his face still in the darkness. I mean, I'm such a massive fan of the cinematography in this film.
Did you tell someone you were coming here? What are you actually doing here tonight?
Yeah, me too. And to add to like their anxiety and the characters is the fact that, like I said, it felt like it was a back and forth thing with them. So when it was like from her point of view, it made it look like he was crazy. But when it was from his point of view, it made like she was crazy. And the way they set up the anxiety, like you said, with the door, she thought this entire time he locked it, and he's like, no. But when he's looking at her view, you catch her in a lot of lies in this film too. So it's like, oh man, maybe she is the crazy one. And just to kind of throw it out there, remember one of the things he said was that these damn kids knock on my door every damn day and then take off and run. So I'm thinking she's playing a trick this entire time. That's what my mindset was. But was I wrong?
No, I mean, one of the shots that I just was so fascinated with was when he made her looks like a tomato soup. And
even the freaking soup looks menacing.
Yes, but the shot they had of basically overhead shot as she's stirring the tomato soup, and then they would do a close up of her stirring it. I mean, that was just
eerie.
It was so well done because you're taking a narrative like we talked about before, then you take it to cinematography, adding these two layers together. And it's true. As you're watching this film, you're wondering which one of these characters is the one that's actually lying the most. But ironically, they were both lying to a certain degree, which once we get towards the ending of the film, now to build up the scene, they lost power. Patrick goes outside. And I love the scene when he is outside.
Sometimes it's like we're drawn to unhappy endings.
And the rain is just coming down, and he is like just looking ahead, but you cannot even see nothing in front of him. All you see is the rain and darkness. So while Patrick's outside the house, inside the house, this visitor starts hearing these like muffled noises. Now, she heard this distorted voices throughout the whole time she's there. You just never figured out what exactly she's hearing. Is this, the weather outside playing, like games or, with the sound? But she eventually makes a find. And I'll let you tell people what she found. And so did this reveal towards the ending like shock you?
Yes, because the first thing she found was the cell phone, and he gave her change at one point in the movie, saying, "There's a payphone down the street. Here's some change." And this entire time, you had a cell phone, but it wasn't his cell phone. It was a victim, I'm going to call it, of his. So then this is where I was like, oh man, I'm completely wrong. This isn't a kid in the neighborhood trying to play a trick. No, this guy is nuts. And she just happened to knock on the wrong fucking door that night. She ends up finding another woman's body in the back. And all hell breaks loose from her. because he comes back into the house at one point, I believe. Now, this is the ending is confusing if you do not pay attention to it. I feel like I'm still a little confused on the whole thing, but because they could have went so many routes with what they were showing us, and my confusion was with when he comes back into the house. So I'm kind of curious on how you thought your version of seeing, because I think I get it, but I'm not quite sure if I get it because of the way the movie ends, which we'll bring that up here in a few minutes.
Well, it turns out that Patrick's a serial killer and that he's been doing this for years. Now, which is ironic because of the way the movie's called, You'll Never Find Me, he kind of mentions it during the film. That the whole time he's been waiting for the lights of police officers coming to his house and knocking on the door. But in his mind, they'll never find him because they have nothing as far as clues. So what he does, he basically drugs these women with this chemical. And he said, was if you give a two doses, they basically get sick. 6 doses, they lose control of their muscles.
Right.
But they can also die. He goes, but I give 8 doses.
Yeah.
Which basically rushes the process.
Right.
And the fact that before this visitor showed up, he already had grabbed this girl from the gas station, I believe, because she was looking for a ride. I'm guessing, she was looking for him to buy her chips. So he bought her chips, she got in the car, and then basically
That's right.
he drugged her. So when she discovered the body, that body was there a few hours before she arrived.
I just got a throwback of Chained in the background.
Yeah. So for me, when Patrick basically drugged her too, at this point of the film, what I believe is the guilt got to him to the point where he started seeing all the women he killed. But when the visitor came to the house, she always looked familiar to him because she resembled the first victim that he killed. Mm-hmm. This is where he was at the beach, and that's why she brought up before that.
So
I was at the beach.
Guessing it correct because I was like, because the way the movie ended with the vial in his pocket, I was like, wait, is he dead? Because I was confused. It made it seem like, did he hallucinate the whole thing? My first thought was, okay, he was on acid and hallucinated the whole film. Then I was like, wait a minute. Obviously, when the scene where all the women was showing up with the towels on their head and stuff, I thought, okay, now his past is coming back to haunt him. They're never, like you said, with I believe the cops were outside banging on the door, so they'll never find him. That's the way I took it, because there's all these. He's a serial killer, so there's all these dead women probably missing. We don't get that because we're strictly inside that RV trailer the entire time. So it's like, that's why I was so confused. I'm like, so wait, did you hallucinate the whole thing, or is he dead too? I don't know.
What happened is the fact that the guilt got to him. And remember, he said, once the lights come on, I know it's over. So at that point, the guilt hit as hard as it could possibly hit, because he imagined the visitor coming back and convincing him to, all right, you got to commit suicide. It's almost like he snapped back into reality. Because remember one thing too, though, and this is the twist.
And the rain stopped.
Is when after he took the drink and he turned around, that body was no longer there. So for me, I mean, I do got to see this again, because this movie has so many things about it that I want to see if I pick up, as far as, figuring out the fact that Patrick is a killer. Because when the movie ends, he opens the door. There's nobody outside. There's no cops. He looks at the vial. It's empty. And he starts laughing. And the door closes. And then you hear him like laughing. Then All of a sudden, you hear him gasping a little bit. Then you hear the thud, and the movie ends. And the fact is that this home was his like shelter, his safety. And remember that there's this whole scene when these women are coming back. He's starting to see the crack in the ceiling. So basically, his home is shattering to the point he's no longer safe in there. And one thing I like about it too is the fact that, which I kind of find it weird, is he would cover the faces of the victims and basically let them die. So he wasn't violent as far as the way he got rid of them.
Right.
But the fact that he covered their face, he couldn't even see them die, I thought was an interesting twist of it.
Another interesting twist was that we never got her name. And that goes for all his victims. He doesn't care for their name.
Yeah. You say you will never remember the names, you'll never remember the faces, you just remember the moments. So there was a lot of things in this film. I'm definitely going to watch it again because I think this needs another watch. But yeah, let's wrap it up. Overall, your thoughts and your score on this one. I mean, what'd you overall think of this film?
I am glad we did this film because I have to be honest, it was so slow. And I was kind of upset. I was like, man, when is this film going to end? Because the one downfall that I had was that their dialogue was repetitive. Because they talked a lot about the gate and having the key, unlocking the door, making a phone call, driving into town. They kept saying it back and forth. Maybe there's a reason, but that's why I think it's one of those films you have to go back and watch for a second time. But it was repetitive. I'm like, you already said that. We already know that the gate's locked, but I do like the part that she kind of comes into realization, like, because I felt like there was some moments she didn't know she was dead. And so when she had the realization, like, well, if the gate's locked, which I find weird that there's a gated community for a trailer neighborhood, but she said, if the gate is locked, how did I get in? And then she comes into realization, she's probably dead because she finds her earring in the medicine bottle. So there was like clues and like there was so many puzzle pieces to this film that it comes together at the end, but you have to watch for each piece and not lose one to get it. And I felt like I lost a couple of pieces of that puzzle, but then I was like, I watched the film and at first I was upset. I was talking to my coworker and I was like, man, I can't stop thinking about it because then I think about this and then I start to put the puzzle together and I'm like, oh, okay. And now I'm starting to appreciate this film a little more because I thought I was having like a little flashback of Z for a second. No, but overall, I do give this probably like I'm going to say a 3 because the dialogue, I felt like the writing could have been a lot. There was so much potential in the writing, but it felt repetitive to me. However, the characters were so strong. They were both great actor and actress. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I did a little bit of research, the directors were actually short story directors, and this was one of them that came into big film. So I thought that was really neat. I want more from it. I want to know more about their stories. But I thought what gives it such, again, the dialogue really died down for me, but the cinematography, the angles that like the close-ups on their face, when she's walking by and he sees the earring, but then all of a sudden the earring's off and in a bottle. So like, I love those little close-ups. The soup looked even evil. The sounds of the rain and the storm sounds like screaming women. So that's what carries this story. And that's what I have to rate it as a 3 because it was too slow of a burn, but I can appreciate the art of the film.
All right, for me, I'm gonna go a little higher. I'm gonna go 4 for this one because I do find it so different than what we're used to, and I appreciate the fact that they took a chance to make a film like this. You don't get many of these films ever, and this one just seemed so different because it was driven by the narrative of the story. Now, like how you were saying that things were being repetitive, Patrick did it a lot to try to catch her out in a lot. So every time he would repeat a lot of stuff she would say was to see if she would change her story, which she did. Because at one point she goes, "I want to go home," and he was like, "Hold up, I thought you were in a motel. Are you a visitor? Or you live around here? What?" So it was almost like a cat and mouse game being played throughout this film. And then you add the layer of the cinematography. I mean, this is by far one of my favorite films with the cinematography. I'm going to go back and study this film as far as how they did these shots, how they did the lighting. It was a small setting that at times felt bigger than what it really was. Because there's a scene where she's in the bathroom when she discovers the earrings. And then she hears them coming. And as she's standing there, I love the scene where he walked by with the lantern in his hand. And he did it in such slow motion, didn't even look in her direction, just kept walking. And I got to give massive props to Jordan Cowan and Brendanrock, because
they were wonderful.
To carry a film like this, even like their mannerisms, how she would talk, how she always looked scared, but at times she looked like she was up to no good. Like when she seen the hammer, when she seen the screwdriver, when she seen the knife, there was certain scenes where you're like, all right, she's about to kill him. And Patrick always portrayed himself as almost being scared half the time. And then there was at one point in the film where he starts, talking about her, the overall she was wearing, and my wife has. So he got a little bit like
creepy.
What I'm looking for. Now I want to say creepy, vulnerable. He put himself vulnerable to bring this aspect of the story, because I don't know. I got a feeling this whole time he was fighting the urge to kill her. And if it wasn't her snooping around, I don't think he would have killed her, which I think leads to the ending of basically the guilt coming back, all the women coming back, that he killed. And when you see how many women are in his house, you're like, oh my God, this guy just went, he went on a hell of a spree.
Where are they?
Yeah. And the fact that he was so confident that he was going to get caught. And that's what I like about his character. His character started off like weak, and by the end of the movie, his character developed every time. And her character, I mean, this movie has so many good things about it. I still go back to saying it won't be for everybody, because not everybody will sit there and watch a narrative like movie like this. But I would say give this movie a chance, because if you do like horror, if you do appreciate storytelling and cinematography, this film is a must watch for me. You just watch it just for, if you don't like the storyline, mute it, whatever, but just visually it's good. These actors are amazing in their roles. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4, because like I kept passing on this movie. I kept hearing about, like, reading about it. I was like, you know what? If we're doing anything called What's Your Story, this is so story driven.
Right.
We got to give this movie a shot. But yeah, any last thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for recommending this one, because this was definitely super different from what we're used to. Because it's either all in, all out, and this one was just like all in, but very small setting. It was like a big story in such a small package. So
Yes.
it was really good.
Yeah, watch it. It's currently streaming on Shudder, I believe. And it is a film that, if you appreciate art, this film is a work of art. So yeah, You'll Never Find Me 2024. Watch it. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment below. And if there is a film that is story driven and you want us to talk about, let us know below. We're open to any suggestions, and we just like these kind of movies that tell stories. So this is JR. That is the Fourth Corner, Lexi. What's your story here on Horror Fiend TV? More on your way, more storytelling. And once again, if you want us to do one of the stories you like, we will be happy to do it. JR, that's Lexi. See you next time. Peace.
Where are you hiding from?